Hey, this is Andrew Jones from Checkered Owl Media, as well as, of course, the Conversation of Art podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in for the big episode 3. We're excited. We have a good show for you today, a great guest by the name of Ryan Getz. But before we get to that, we are going to just chat a little bit about subscriptions. If you would like to subscribe to the show, we have lots of ways to do it. We're on YouTube, and you should be able to find just Conversation of Art podcast. If you can't for some reason, you can always go on our website, which is just www.conversationofartpodcast.com. And on there, you'll find links to subscribe via YouTube. Right on the side of the website, you have a place where you can subscribe via RSS or email if you'd like it straight to your email every week when we release. Of course, you can also subscribe on Stitcher Radio, or you can subscribe on iTunes. That's how I subscribe to most of my podcasts. And see, your phone comes preloaded with the podcast app, which is a great little app. And there's lots of other options there too. Without further ado, I'd love to jump into the show here. I'm going to introduce you to my friend Ryan Getz, who is an album reviewer and a blogger, as well as a showcase promoter and whatnot in Columbus, Ohio. He's really active in the music scene there, but he's really passionate about promoting great indie music everywhere. So if you are a musician, this is a great place to kind of see what it takes to get on his blog and on his radar. Or if you're not a musician, there's just a lot of cool inside information about how he came to fall in love with music and the music industry. And we'll take it from here. Thanks. Cool.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Ryan. And it's great to talk to you a little more face-to-face and personally than we have previously after, talking about various albums and stuff via email and reviews and all of that. I'd just love to hear a little bit more. I guess I'm relatively familiar with I Am Tuned Up and what you guys do, but what is it? Would you say it all together? How would you encompass it?
Well, first of all, like I said before, although like the name, the business name of the whole entity is I Am Tuned Up, we shortened the name of the website back in June when we kind of revamped it to just Tuned Up, because the guy that I was talking, the guy that kind of helps with the rebranding, that was one suggestion of his. He just thought it would be catchier, and actually, since then, we got added to the Hype Machine blog aggregator.
Yeah.
Which was pretty awesome. I wasn't expecting that to happen this quickly. I'll just tell you a little bit of the background.
Yeah.
That's easier.
Yeah, how did it all kick off, and where did you go? And that'd be great.
Well, it started as, I've always kind of been, I've always been kind of a person that have one thing that I get really into for a period of time. When I was a little kid, I guess not that little, 12, 13, there was a period of time where I was really obsessed with like roller coasters and theme parks, things like that. I thought I wanted to be a ride engineer when I grew up.
Nice.
And then I grew out of that, and then there was a period of time in which I was really into completely off the wall, completely different, but like Bible prophecy and like Revelations and all that kind of thing. So, if you can imagine, when you're a young impressionable 14-year-old and you're Googling interpretations of Revelation, you run into all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah,
and
departure from a ride engineer too.
Yeah, but ever since but even when I was younger, there was like from the time I became aware of like popular music, my parents always used to ask me like, who is this on the radio and stuff. And then kind of after I grew out of the both of those two things. I started was around the time I started listening to a Christian radio station in my hometown, which is where I live now, Columbus, Ohio, called Radio U, and basically I would call them like loosely alternative Christian rock.
Okay.
At this point in time, their artists aren't exclusively Christian believing, but the station as a whole definitely has a Christian message. And they keep things clean, and there's definitely a focus on kind of what's underground. But it was because of listening to that. But listening to that station throughout high school was really kind of my gateway into learning about independent music culture, and it was just kind of something I followed, all through college, and even in college, my credit card statements used to end up at my parents' house. So my mom would open up my bills and she would see all this stuff from iTunes, and she would yell at me for not spending my money better.
Right, because it all went to music.
Because it all went to music. And so when I graduated college, I kind of thought, well, instead of buying music all the time, I can apply online to some of these websites I read all the time and get advanced music for free. And so that's what I started reviewing, and I Am Tuned Up was just kind of this thing that I threw together because everyone else had their own blog, and I felt like I needed to give it a creative title.
Right.
And it just so happened that over time, Tuned Up has become something bigger than actually any of the other outlets that I wrote for in the beginning.
Okay.
Which I didn't expect.
Right. So you were writing for other people, just like as a guest reviewer, but then started up your own. Okay.
Yeah. I did something in Columbus called I was the Columbus Indie Music Examiner. There's a big website called examiner.com, which is kind of a joke. You should never submit your client's music to it, because nobody that I know of actually ends up on examiner.com because they like that brand. It's only because they're Googling a topic and they end up, on there.
Right.
As far as I can tell,
anyone likes the voice of Examiner per se.
Basically, it seems like their whole business model is let's aggregate as many wannabe writers as we can in as many different cities as we can, and as many different topics as we can, and just sort of gather ad revenue off of all these.
Right, because people at least post it to their own socials, and then get what we get out of it. So
that's kind of a joke. Then I wrote for a blog called Mesic for a while. That was kind of based in Chicago. And then for a very short period of time, I wrote for a blog called Vinyl Magazine, which is based in Atlanta.
Okay.
And that ended after they stopped responding to my emails. So
fair enough.
But I guess like the whole philosophy behind Tuned Up was kind of where I get the name is kind of sort of a pun on three levels. The tuning of instruments, of music, being in tune with being in tune with what's trending, what you should know, and just, where my personal faith comes into play, kind of being tuned up,
Right. Okay.
tuned up toward God, which that's not something I really advertise on the site, except maybe in my personal story a little bit. It's just because because our goal isn't to be a Christian blog, or even a local blog, which there have been people that have called us both of those things, which is funny because we don't have either of those things written anywhere.
Right.
On our social media or on the site or anything.
Yeah, because looking at your site, I mean, I see NPR stuff, Bjork stuff, Talkie, Flaming Lips. I mean, it's kind of Father John Misty. It's like all over like a big range of music and style, which is great.
People have just pegged us as a Columbus blog because it's where most of our content is originating. Forgive the background noise. I live with five other guys. Like, we all rent from a house. So yeah, that's kind of what.
You guys over time have kind of gotten involved with the Columbus scene too, though, right? Like, the blog itself is mostly reviews and stuff, but you seem like you're rather tuned up with the Columbus scene, and you promote shows and stuff out there as well. Is that accurate?
Well, that's accurate. I mean, I would say the idea behind the show booking is not so much yes, there is kind of an implied, I do believe very strongly in the music culture of the city that I live in. I think there's a lot going on here that people should know about. I don't like to. I'm kind of breaking my philosophy a little bit with you here, but I don't like to say that publicly on social media a lot because I think there's stuff everywhere that needs to be heard, but I guess but I really do think that at least as far as like a talent pool is concerned, Columbus is an incredibly underrated culture.
Yeah, it seems to.
We lack a little bit of infrastructure, but we have a lot of quality music originating here right now, and I'm still discovering stuff almost on a weekly basis.
That's great. So is so then would you say that, I guess, the show promotion is something you're personally interested in building the scene, but then as far as tuned up as a brand goes, that it's kind of meant not to be localized in one place, but you as a person are just built into the Columbus scene? Is that kind of?
I would say that's mostly true. Another reason I do the show promotion. One, my goal has never been to just compete with other promoters in the scene. Just by attending a lot of shows, I've befriended a lot of them, and I think they're all doing great things. For example, there's one of the more prominent promoters in Columbus, the president of that company, for a long time was the manager of Reliant K. Around their era of the Anatomy of the Tongue-in-Cheek album, when the Sadie Hawkins dance was popular.
Oh yeah, I love that album. That was kind of one of my. I wouldn't say my introduction to pop punk, but it was one of the records that really took me down that rabbit hole. It's like,
absolutely,
that came out just Oh man, that came out just a little bit after Blink's Enema of the State, right? Would that be it?
Yeah, I
Came a little
mean,
bit later.
yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of that whole for a period of high school that kind of it sucked me in. And the Morning Glory and just lots of different stuff in that vein. I mean, it was huge. It was yeah.
Well, yeah. So basically, that was kind of a sidebar, but kind of my go-to strategy with booking a show in Columbus is my favorite thing to do is basically create an event that's centered around strong local talent that will have a draw, and with one or two um, touring artists that don't really have their footing yet, that maybe we've discovered via the blog, or preferably via the blog, but sometimes elsewhere.
Yeah.
They kind of pair with that show and kind of create your event that way, as opposed to just weeding through offers and tour packages, which I've done enough of these events now that people are starting to hit me up and say things like, oh, so and so told me you do shows, and please help my band, and blah blah blah. And it's like it's really hard to say no, but at the same time, I kind of got to stick with the philosophy of
yeah. Well, and every promoter, I think every good promoter finds their niche that way. You know what I mean? Like after a while,
yeah.
As a promoter, you know what works in your town, and you kind of have a way you do shows. And it's not the only way to do shows, but it's the way you do shows because it's a system that you've developed, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like as far as like consistently getting like strong attendance to tuned up shows, that's something I'm still working on.
Sure.
But I've had people say that. I've had people say over and over, like, you're really good at putting together strong lineups,
right?
Which is a good place to start. To start at least.
Well, after a while, people trust that curation, right? They're like, hey, it's a tuned up show. Maybe I don't know most of these acts, but if tuned up put on the show, they're going to be good acts.
Right, what I'm hoping will happen is this philosophy will spread outside of just me, because it's a lot of people still think of it as Ryan Getz's blog, and part of it's just my personality, I guess, but I always get kind of uncomfortable when people are like, I've heard so much about you. Your opinion means so much. Blah blah blah. It's kind of like, well, I'm just a guy that's unnaturally obsessed with music, who kind of fell into this whole thing by accident.
Right. Yeah.
So
how do you feel like? I mean, but that is important, right? Like to have people whose opinions matter, which is something I think, I don't know, maybe you can speak to this, but I think it's something people crave more now that, radio is down and labels are down. I feel like to some degree music blogs and music bloggers have taken up a position of curation, saying, hey, this is a band you guys need to be checking out, because those of so much of the population isn't unnaturally obsessed with music that they're looking for someone who is to weed out the great stuff, right? It's like, oh man, I'd love some great indie bands, but I don't have time to pick through 50 of them. But when you're unhealthily obsessed like we are, you're like, I weed through bands all day long. That's all I do. So it's like, it's a bit different.
I wish I could do that all day long. I'm not able to right now. Which has been something I've been working on for the past, or I should say I've been trying to figure out for the past 3 odd years. I work a 9 to 5 office job.
Okay.
with a small investment company based here in Columbus. Well, Columbus and San Francisco is kind of an interesting story. There are less than 20 people in the entire company, and yet our two offices are Columbus, Ohio, and San Francisco.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So during the day, I'm doing research related to private investment opportunities. So primarily commercial real estate is what I do research and run numbers and stuff for during the day right now. But I've been trying to figure out a way to sort of merge, my evening passion into my day job.
Sure. Yeah.
Because this job has done so much for me that it wouldn't really feel right at this point in time to just quit and pursue music business. I would like to find a way to merge the two, and luckily, I think the investment business is versatile enough that might actually be possible. So,
is that anything you have some ideas for already, or are they all under wraps as you strategize?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. For a long time, I thought what that was going to mean for me personally was us taking extra cash that we had sitting around the company and buying a building in Columbus and starting a new music venue.
Okay.
That way, if the venue fails, the company, as a company, we'd still own the building and be able to do something else with it. But I kind of had an epiphany about 2-3 months ago. I was at a show. It was like 11:30 at night, and I was kind of tired, and I saw the owner of the bar like running around with with the towel and with the bar towel in his pants, and I just remember, and I was just thinking, that just doesn't seem like me,
Right.
being kind of an owner operator of a bar music venue. Now what I realized I am passionate about is basically creating, seeking out value add opportunities within the entertainment sphere. So that could mean finding people that have ideas that maybe want to be operators and investing in those ideas and buying into the business in the real estate, doing that. Or I've also considered doing some research into music licensing, because in a way, licensing music isn't that much different than putting together an investment deal. You're just working for an investment company. You're just a middle. We're just a middleman between the investors and the business. Whereas if you're a licensing firm, instead of pitching a property or a business to a fund, you're pitching a song to
a producer.
Or a company for a marketing purpose. Yeah. And it wasn't really something I had thought about all too seriously. I was hanging out at a show, actually, same venue as before, and I had a conversation with this guy named Bill, who I actually first met at a Paper Out concert. But he's probably old enough to be my dad, but his son is the drummer for Fever, who are good friends of mine, and they're on Slow Speak Records, which is the label that Davey Basinger from Bleach is really involved with now. And he was telling me, this is something you really ought to consider, because people are gonna look at you as kind of a guru, and
Right.
and you can create a catalog of indie bands, and source it, and source your catalog to different projects, which Beaver Fever has had some success, and they're just a small time, slow speak band. They've had songs get featured on Nike used their song "Beautiful Dream" during an ad campaign for the 2012 Olympics.
Oh wow!
In London, and
great placement.
They're using their song "Hypnotized," which is a current radio single, in another ad campaign for American Airlines now. So and they got and that was a nice chunk of change for both the band and the licensing company.
Oh yeah.
So
those are great placements. They're huge. That's awesome.
And just to give you another example, there's another one of my favorite local bands in Columbus, Kid Runner, who kind of have an indie pop sound. One of their songs was used by ESPN in the X Games 2 summers ago, which is pretty good for them.
Yeah,
that got them a lot of exposure.
Well, yeah, licensing is great that way, because it's for one a paycheck that artists all need to keep on the road and keep just doing what they do. But then it's also exposure. Like it's a double win, as long as it's played right and partnered with the right people. So that's perfect.
So I guess it's looking at this whole puzzle. I don't see the blog necessarily as being like my full-time, like, primary source of income, unless something really, really weird happens and we become like the next Pitchfork or something. I don't really see that being the case. I mean, I would like to keep growing it just because kind of it's someone else said it. I was talking to someone else about this, and they were like, well, it's your baby, and you want to see it grow. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess. So.
No, well, and that's great. And you guys are starting to get pitched some pretty big albums and stuff too, aren't you?
Yeah. One of my roommates actually just told me last week that he's not a musician with a big album. But one of my roommates last week told me he wanted to start writing for fun, and his first album review is going to be the new Imagine Dragons record, which comes out tomorrow. So Austin, if you can hear me, please write it soon. So it's in line with the release date.
That's how
his room is like 50 feet that way, so I'm yelling at him.
That's great. How do you guys tend to release the review on release date when you can, or you just see what happens?
I would like to be more in line with release date, but it's mostly just kind of, there's no rhyme or reason to how we post things. It's just kind of, I'm still figuring out, honestly, like who I can ask to be consistent writers or not. Because so basically my process is until someone has proved to me that they're going to be a consistent contributor, I have them just send me the review as like a Word document.
Right.
And if I get, say, like 5 or 6 reviews within a relatively short period of time from them, then I'll add them. I'll give them access to the back end of the website, and they can just and then they can post directly
and just post reviews. And then when you guys get I mean, I think this is interesting to a lot of people, because a lot of artists are trying to figure out how to make an impact on things. So how do you, I guess I'd love to hear both ways. Like when you get a larger artist, is that just something then you assign to whoever you think would be a good writer for it, or just whoever has the least on their plate, or how do you do that? So let's say you get the Imagine Dragons record across your desk. Like, we definitely want to review this. So what happens next?
Well, actually, like a lot of times with the bigger artists, we don't get the music sent directly to us. It's something you have to ask for.
Right.
For a big artist like Imagine Dragons, for obvious reasons, they don't want that getting leaked. But basically, for the most part, I let the contributors write about what they want. I just try to post a list to. I used to do a mass email every week or two, but after a while, people stopped responding didn't respond to the emails consistently. So now I have a private Facebook group that every once in a while I'll just post a list of artists that have releases coming out soon, or sometimes like a particular PR company will send us a schedule of what they have.
That's coming up soon.
Of what's coming up soon, and I'll copy that and post it in the group, and then I just tell people, hey, take a look at this. I would, click on a couple unfamiliar names. Just let me know if anything looks interesting, and we'll get you set up. But a lot of these PR companies, they'll send you they'll have the link to download the record in the pitch email.
Right.
But with Imagine Dragons, what happened was, I was told by a writer that he wanted to review the album. So then I emailed the contact. So then I replied to the pitch and said, hey, I have a writer interested in reviewing this, and I copied him in that, and then I think they set up like a private link to stream the album.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was watermarked to just that one email, or if it was just
a streaming
link,
yeah.
or just a streaming link they're only making available to media people, or what it was.
Yeah.
But he got a reply, and yeah.
That's great. So then, as far as like if an indie band is pitching to you, what's the sort of stuff that actually gets you on, would get them on your radar as someone you're kind of more interested? Like, so let's say I'm managing some new band from Arizona, and they're going to, well, let's say it's not me because we already have a relationship, so obviously that email would be a little different. But just some random band wants to reach out to you and actually get a review. What's their best shot at that? Because obviously you have more incoming than you have time to handle. So what's the kind of stuff that?
I have. This is just my unread emails, not even the read ones that I haven't listened to yet. I I currently have 315 unread emails in my inbox.
Yeah. Which I'm sure is typical of most people who run a blog or like a review site. Right?
I think I went through about 30 or 40 of them. Tonight I only have time to do that like once or twice a week, like really go through emails. I mean, I try to work on the blog somewhat, a little bit every day, but as far as actually going through submissions, I only have time to do that like 1 or 2 nights a week. But as far as like interesting content, actually my favorite submissions to read are the people who go to the contact form on the website itself and fill that out, and you can tell because when they do that, usually they're really, really unknown. And but as far as like things that pique my interest, just anyone with like an interesting story who or tell us a little bit of like the story behind the song or the album or whatever, or indicate to me in some way that you've spent time on the blog other than you Googled music blogs and clicked on the contact form, and that's it.
Yeah, right. That they've maybe read some of your work and have a feel a little bit for what you do at any rate.
Yeah. Which I mean, that might sound a little. I mean, I realize that might sound like a little bit of a double standard because we, in theory, in theory, we cover anything. In theory, at least, because it's. I say that because I generally let the contributors write about what they want, unless it's I try to keep things relatively relatively family friendly, which there have been a couple times in which we've maybe crossed that line a little bit, but
right.
But like for example, there's a local band in Columbus. I guess you call them like an indie dance rock duo. They're called Damn the Witch Siren, and they're I think their music's great. It's really catchy. It's really it's well written. It's but lyrically, it's very lyrically they're pretty R-rated, at times, which
sure.
So much of their content is kind of driven by driven by passion and sex and things like that, like the girl that sings, her stage name is Bobby Kitten. So that basically, it doesn't. I mean, that sounds it kind of speaks for itself. So I've reviewed their. That's an example of a band that I've reviewed their EP, but I linked to their sound. Like I posted a link to their SoundCloud, but I didn't link to their music video because I was afraid of how some people might react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would probably, and for that same reason, even though I've seen them perform live a number of times, I don't know if I would ever book them on a tuned up showcase, for that same reason, which part of me feels kind of bad because, they're nice, very down to earth people, but but at the same time, I feel I feel like I need to honor my convictions too. But yeah, just make it easy to listen to the music. Downloads are always preferable over streams. Not necessarily because we own the music. We now own your music for free, although that is a plus. But because it's just easier to, I don't always have time to sit down and listen to, and find some place with a reliable, with a fast internet connection and listen to your stuff. Maybe I want to preview your music in the car on the way to work or something.
Yeah.
Plug my iPod in. It just makes it easier to kind of fit that in. And yeah, just be genuine. Tell your story. Say something witty. There's one of my favorite indie albums that I reviewed last year. They've since kind of gone off the radar. I tried to follow up with them about maybe booking them in Columbus, and they never got back to me. But they're a band from Michigan called Of ASAP. I don't even know. I have no clue if they're even active anymore. But I got just this very personal email from a guy in the band just saying "Hey, I know you're probably never going to read this, but here's that would mean so much if you even just listen to this." And he went into this big long, and it wasn't a super long wordy thing, but I don't know. Just something about. But there's a part of me that went well, he said you're never going to listen to this, so now I'm going to listen to it.
I'll show you.
I'll show you. And I liked it a lot. So yeah, and there have been other people that in Columbus and beyond that are starting to kind of jump on board and show initiative, like the guy who did the Flaming Lips piece and the Bjork piece. He's very, very involved with DIY culture in Columbus, and he's one of those guys who doesn't really have a real job. He doesn't really have a real day job per se. He just kind of does guerrilla, music stuff all the time.
Just does stuff. Yeah.
He lives in a house venue, so he does that. There is a burlesque bar that he hangs out at all the time, where he books shows.
Okay.
He has a folk punk project. He has a hip hop looping project. He has a punk band. He's getting ready to go down to San Antonio for a month long as a resident for all of March. That's kind of a month long thing, and he's kind of established kind of the folk punk scene in Columbus, which isn't really which the ideology of that isn't really something I can relate to personally. But he has his hands in a lot of different things, and I'm really fortunate to have someone who has his hands in so many different projects backing tuned up. So
yeah, no, well, that's how a lot of guys are able to make a go of it, right? Like you're just working on
Yeah.
10 things and maybe none of them are super profitable, but between 10 of them you can pay the rent, and it's just kind of get through.
I don't know. I worry about him sometimes because I feel like he's just because I feel like he's taking on too much, but to do these things well, um, but he's he's one of the hardest working people I know, and I think, and hopefully you'll enjoy his write-ups too.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Well, I'll keep an eye on what you guys are doing always, so that's great.
What else?
Yeah, well, that's a bunch of this stuff I wanted to really chat with you about, actually.
Okay.
I guess what I would love to do too is just to give you a couple minutes to, I mean, we've already talked about the blog lots, but just to more directly kind of plug where people can find you and, what you have going on. If there's any new projects you'd like to talk about, I want to give you a chance to do that.
Well, you can find us on the web at imtuneup.com, on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook's / I am tuned up, Twitter at I am tuned up. You can find a lot of our contributors via Twitter as well. I think I have them in the profile. You can follow them personally. And
nice.
There's up is an Instagram profile as well, but that kind of doubles as my personal Instagram. I haven't really made up my mind on how to direct the Instagram yet. So, but
Sure.
But as far as what else we have going on, I mean, we always album reviews coming up. We hope to get back into some more concert photography soon through some of our other contributors. We do single reviews, which are just current songs that come across our radar. Relevant discovery, reviewing a song or an album. It's basically, hey, this is basically an outlet for anybody who writes for the blog to say, hey, here's someone cool that I discovered organically recently that I think people should know about, that may or may not have it.
Right.
Like something that's current,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
and then
the
there are
beauty
a couple,
of digital in the internet, is that current is such a, I don't know, like it doesn't have to be current anymore to be new. Like you can find anything. It's one of the beauties, I just think, of like YouTube and iTunes and Spotify, and all of it is like I could discover a band tomorrow and maybe turns out they have a back catalog of 6 albums that I love, or maybe it doesn't and they're just brand new, or maybe, it's I think that's one of the beauties of the being a music fan in the digital age.
Yeah. And there are a couple of like music driven social networks I discovered recently that we'll be writing our reactions to as well.
Oh, that'd be great. I leafed through those, but I haven't found one to land on, so I'm interested to hear your take.
Locally in Columbus, we just announced 3 smaller shows that were I guess tuned up sponsored events in Columbus, and hopefully this year I would like to do a bigger showcase. Maybe start with bands locally and regionally that we have a long history with, and the goal is to move forward into, rather than calling it a festival, calling it a showcase event. Just like maybe have like 5, 6 maybe have like a biannual or seasonal big event where we can showcase hopefully some up and coming national acts too.
Yeah.
And locally, we hope to expand our contributors and our readership through having writers based in different towns that are writing about kind of basically doing what we're doing in Columbus, which is writing about a mix of both national, like more known acts and like that come across the radar, and even like local stuff that they feel like deserves to be more well known on a national level, and we can kind of use Tuned Up to sort of as like a broadcasting platform for that.
I love that, man. I think, like I said earlier, I mean, I think you guys have the opportunity to become such important curators of what gets hot. You know, I think the music blogging world is becoming critical to the ecosphere. So, yeah.
Well, you know, and I can't really take the credit for that last idea of basically being like the curator of local music across a national or international spectrum. That was actually that idea came about when I was talking with the president, with Joey Hendrickson, the president of the Columbus Songwriters Association, about my venue idea actually, and he was kind of skeptical about the venue idea, and he was saying like, well, as you grow to that, I really think you should think about what have you thought about this way instead of just like amassing writers and writing about whatever, actually like having like a deliberately expanding to like maybe not going to Nashville or LA right away, but going to like Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, places like that, and going to mid-sized markets and having writers that are writing about their local scenes, and it mixed with what they like nationally, but they're not calling them local artists. You're just saying, hey, check this guy out. Yeah. So when you do that, then you then it kind of snowballs, and so as far as growing the blog, that's kind of our strategy for it. Yeah. I'm trying to play on the website will not be sufficient to handle that at some point, but for now it works.
For now it works.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, we're probably out of time for now, but sometime maybe in a couple months I'll have to have you back on and we can chat more about that, and maybe the ideas will keep developing.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. I've never done a podcast before.